Listen closely, for this is a tale of a miracle that started in the cold, bright halls of Seoul's Incheon Airport. Naomi, a 24-year-old black woman with dreams as wide as the ocean, was standing in the terminal, clutching a lukewarm coffee. She was a long way from home, having traveled to Korea for a teaching job that had fallen through the moment she landed. Her heart was heavy with the weight of student loans and her mother's medical bills back in America. She felt invisible in the rushing crowd until she felt a tug. It was not a soft tug, but an iron-tight grip on the fabric of her coat. She looked down and saw a little girl, perhaps 7 years old, with dark hair falling in waves around a face that was red from crying. The child's eyes were wide and filled with a desperate, screaming recognition. Before Naomi could speak, the little girl buried her face against Naomi's legs and wailed a word that stopped the hearts of everyone nearby. "Mommy!" Naomi froze, her coffee nearly slipping from her hand. She looked around for the child's parents, but the girl only clung harder, her small fingers twisting into Naomi's clothes as if her very life depended on it. "Sweetie, I don't know you," Naomi whispered, her voice trembling. But the child shook her head violently, sobbing into Naomi's stomach. People began to stare. Security guards approached, their faces stern. "Miss, is this your daughter?" they asked in Korean and then English. Naomi opened her mouth to say no, to explain she had just arrived, but a voice cut through the chaos like a sharp blade through silk. "Yes," the voice said. It was deep, commanding, and carried a weight of power that made the entire airport seem to go silent. Naomi looked up and saw him, a man who looked like he was carved from stone, walking toward them with an intensity that made the air turn cold. The man was tall, his broad shoulders draped in a black suit that cost more than Naomi's entire life was worth. His jaw was sharp, his cheekbones high, and his eyes were so dark they seemed to swallow the light of the terminal. This was Kang Min-ho, though Naomi did not know his name yet. Power radiated from him like heat from a furnace. As he approached, the crowd parted instinctively, sensing a predator in their midst. He stopped just 3 feet away, his gaze moving from the crying child to Naomi's face with a look that made her skin prickle with fear. "Jaya," he said softly, crouching down. "Come here, little girl." But Jaya, the child, only shook her head and gripped Naomi's legs tighter. "She's my mommy! She came back!" the girl screamed. Naomi saw something flicker across the man's face, a brief flash of agonizing pain, followed by a cold rage, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "I'm sorry," Naomi said quickly, her heart racing. "There has been a mistake. I don't know your daughter. I just got off a plane." The man stood up, his height towering over her. He didn't look at the guards, he only looked at Naomi, his eyes locked onto hers with a terrifying focus. "She knows you," he said, his voice low and measured. "Apparently." Before Naomi could protest further, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her stomach dropped into her shoes. He flipped it open, revealing a diamond ring that caught the fluorescent lights, throwing rainbows across the floor. It was beautiful, obscenely expensive, and utterly terrifying. "Jaya needs stability," he said. "Her mother died 2 years ago. She hasn't spoken a single word to anyone since that day, until now, until she saw you." Naomi's mouth went dry. "I can't just... This is insane," she whispered. 2 months. Pretend to be her mother for 2 months. Name your price." Naomi felt the world tilting on its axis. $3 million, the man said. "American. Transferred to your account immediately." Naomi's mind raced so fast she felt dizzy. She had student loans drowning her. Her mother back in Chicago was facing surgery they couldn't afford. Naomi had just been fired from a job before she even started. $3 million would not just fix her life, it would change her family's destiny forever. But she looked at the man and saw danger incarnate. He pulled out his phone and showed her a bank screen with more zeros than she could process. 2 months, he repeated. "You stay in my home, you act as her mother, you help her heal. At the end, you walk away with everything cleared." Naomi looked down at the little girl. Jaya's grip was so tight it was bruising Naomi's legs. "Please, Mommy, don't leave again," the girl whispered in broken English. The desperation in that small, shattered voice did what the money couldn't. It broke Naomi's resistance. She felt a surge of empathy for this broken child who saw a mother in a stranger's face. 2 months, Naomi heard herself say, her voice sounding far away. "Then I'm gone." Minho's lips curved slightly, though it wasn't a smile. It was more like a hunter claiming his prize. "Of course," he said. Before she could pull back, he took her left hand. His fingers were warm and calloused, the hands of a man who knew how to use a weapon. He slid the heavy ring onto her finger. It felt like a shackle. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. King," he said. The guards bowed and stepped back. Naomi realized then that she hadn't just taken a job. She had stepped into a world where she was no longer in control. She was now part of something deadly, and the diamond on her finger was the mark of her new cage. The next morning, Naomi woke up in a bedroom that was larger than her entire apartment back home. The sheets were pure silk, and the floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the glittering, sharp skyline of Seoul. Everything in the room was a work of art, from the hand-carved furniture to the museum-quality paintings on the walls. A soft knock sounded at the door. "Come in," Naomi said, sitting up and pulling the covers to her chest. An elderly woman entered carrying a silver tray with breakfast. Her eyes were kind, but they were also assessing, as if she were trying to see through Naomi's skin. "Good morning, Mrs. Kang. I am Mrs. Choi, the housekeeper. Mr. Kang asked me to bring you breakfast." Naomi felt a flush of embarrassment. "Thank you, but I'm not, thank you." She felt acutely out of place, a black woman from Chicago suddenly being addressed as the wife of a Korean titan. "Is Jaya awake?" Naomi asked. Mrs. Choi smiled gently. "She has been sitting outside your door since dawn. She refused to eat a single bite until you woke up." Guilt twisted in Naomi's chest. The child was so fragile, her hope so thin. "I'll go to her," Naomi said, quickly moving to get dressed. Mrs. Choi hesitated at the door. "Mr. Kang also left instructions. You are to meet him in his office at 10 o'clock. He will explain the arrangement in detail." The way the woman said arrangement made Naomi wonder what the staff actually knew. After a quick breakfast with Jaya, who ate with a hunger that seemed to be more about Naomi's presence than the food, Naomi walked down the long marble hallway. Her reflection in the polished walls looked small and uncertain. She reached a set of heavy mahogany doors and knocked. "Enter," a voice commanded. It was time to meet the man who had bought her life for $3 million. Kang Minho sat behind a massive desk, reading something on a tablet. He didn't look up when she entered, he simply gestured to a chair. "Sit." Naomi bristled at his tone. She wasn't a servant, even if he was paying her like a queen. She sat down and took a moment to study him. In the light of day, he was even more imposing. She noticed a faint scar along his jaw and the way his shoulders remained tense, as if he were always waiting for an attack. When he moved, his jacket shifted, and she saw the dark leather of a gun holster. Her breath caught. "You're wondering what you've gotten into," he said, finally looking up. His eyes were cold and focused. "I run several businesses. Most are legitimate. Some are less so. You will hear rumors. People will whisper that I am a monster, a ghost, a king of the underground. Ignore them. Your only concern is Jaya." Naomi leaned forward. "What happened to her mother?" Minho's expression turned arctic. "That is not your concern." "If I am to be her mother, I need to know," Naomi insisted. Minho leaned across the desk, his gaze pinning her in place. "You are not pretending to be her mother. For the next 2 months, you are her mother. You live here, you eat here, you sleep here. You will attend her school events, you will tuck her in, you will comfort her during her nightmares. You will be available whenever she needs you. Is that understood?" Naomi felt a spark of anger. "What about my life? My family?" "Your mother's bills are paid," he said, sliding a document across the desk. "Your apartment is maintained. Your loans are cleared. You have no life outside these walls for 60 days. Naomi stared at the papers. He had done it all overnight. The efficiency was terrifying. "How did you do this?" she asked. "I am thorough," he replied, standing up to button his jacket. "And remember,
You do not leave this property without security. You do not speak of this deal, and most importantly, you do not disappoint Jaya, or you will learn why people fear me." That night, the silence of the mansion was shattered by a piercing scream. Naomi bolted upright in bed, her heart hammering against her ribs. She didn't think, she just ran. She followed the sound down the hall to Jaya's room. The room was enormous, filled with expensive toys, but it felt suffocating with fear. Jaya was thrashing in her bed, her eyes closed, screaming for her mother in a voice that broke Naomi's heart. Hey, I'm here," Naomi said, climbing into the bed and pulling the small, shaking body into her arms. "I've got you, Jaya. I'm right here." The little girl sobbed, her fingers digging into Naomi's arms. "Don't leave. Everyone leaves." "I'm not going anywhere, baby. I promise," Naomi whispered. It was a lie. She only had 60 days. But in that moment, she meant it with every fiber of her being. The door opened quietly. Minho stood in the doorway, still dressed in his suit despite the late hour. His face was unreadable as he watched them. "She gets them every night," he said, his voice unusually low. "Nothing helps." Naomi looked up at him, her eyes fierce. "How long have you been trying?" 2 years, he said, moving closer to the bed. "I've hired the best therapists, the best specialists. Nothing works." Naomi began to rock Jaya gently, humming a low, soulful song her own mother used to sing to her back in Chicago. Slowly, the child's breathing evened out. Her grip loosened, and her head fell against Naomi's chest. "What are you doing?" Minho whispered, looking at Naomi as if she had performed a miracle. "Something my mom did for me. Sometimes children don't need specialists. They just need to feel someone is there." Minho stared at her for a long time, his dark eyes softening just a fraction. When Jaya was finally deep in sleep, he reached out and helped Naomi lay her down. In the hallway, he caught Naomi's wrist. "Thank you," he said. It was the first time he sounded like a human being instead of a boss. The following morning, a secret was revealed that would change everything. Naomi was helping Jaya change clothes after breakfast when she noticed it. On the child's lower back was a small, distinctive birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. Naomi's world stopped turning. Her hands began to shake so violently she had to pull them away. 7 years ago, back in America, Naomi had given birth to a daughter. She had been 19, broke, and desperate, but she had loved that baby more than life. She had taken the baby to a crowded mall, turned away for just 1 second to grab a bottle, and when she looked back, the stroller was empty. The police had searched for months, but they found nothing. Eventually, the case went cold, and Naomi was left with a hole in her soul that never healed. That baby had that exact birthmark, a crescent moon in the exact same spot. "Mommy, you okay?" Jaya asked, looking back with wide, innocent eyes. "Fine, baby, just fine," Naomi choked out, her heart racing. But she wasn't fine. The birthmark was rare. It was unique. Could it be? Was it possible that her lost child had ended up in the hands of a Korean mafia boss? She spent the rest of the day in a daze, her mind screaming. By evening, she knew she needed proof. While Jaya slept, Naomi carefully took a strand of the girl's hair and placed it in a small plastic bag she had hidden. She then took a swathe from her own cheek. She had to know. She didn't see Minho watching her from the shadows of the hallway, his expression thoughtful and dark. He knew she was hiding something, but he didn't know that she had just found the piece of her soul she thought was lost forever. Naomi stayed awake all night, clutching the plastic bags, praying for a miracle and fearing the truth. If Jaya was her daughter, then Minho was not just a protector, he was a kidnapper. A few days later, Minho took them out to an exclusive restaurant. It was a test, Naomi realized, to see if she could play the part of a high society wife. She wore a dress Mrs. Choi had left for her, a deep emerald silk that complemented her skin perfectly. When she walked down the stairs, Minho's eyes tracked her every movement. For a moment, he forgot to be the cold boss. "You look," he started, then stopped himself. "Jaya will be pleased." At dinner, Naomi watched him closely. He was surprisingly patient with the child, cutting her steak into tiny pieces and listening to her stories with his full attention. This didn't look like a monster. It looked like a father, but a father who might have her stolen child. The thought made Naomi feel sick. "Are you all right?" Minho asked, his gaze sharp as a needle. "Just overwhelmed," she lied. He reached across the table and covered her hand. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through her. "You are doing well. Jaya is smiling. I haven't heard her laugh in 2 years." Naomi felt a crush of guilt. If Jaya was her daughter, everything Minho believed was a lie. "Mr. Kang," a voice interrupted. A man approached their table, tall and polished, but with a smile that felt like a threat. "I didn't expect to see you here." Minho's face went cold. "Director Yoon." The man's eyes slid over Naomi. "I heard rumors of a new wife. I didn't believe them. An American?" "My wife is none of your concern," Minho said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "Of course," Yoon smiled. "I just wonder if she knows what kind of man she married." The tension was so thick Naomi could hardly breathe. Minho stood up slowly, his hand moving to Naomi's shoulder in a protective, possessive grip. "We are leaving." In the car, Naomi realized she was entering a war, and she was the most vulnerable soldier on the field.
By the end of the week, Naomi managed to slip away to a private clinic in downtown Seoul. She used the cash Minho had given her for shopping to pay for an expedited DNA test. "I need the results as fast as possible," she told the receptionist. The woman nodded, her expression blank. In a city like this, money bought silence. 48 hours, the woman said. Naomi returned to the mansion, her heart a drum in her chest. Those 48 hours were the longest of her life. She spent every second with Jaya, watching the way the girl tilted her head, the way she laughed, looking for glimpses of herself. That evening, she found Minho in the garden. He was looking at the horizon, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "She's happy with you," he said without turning around. "She was a ghost before. After her mother died in that car accident, she stopped living." Naomi walked up to him. "What really happened?" Minho sighed, a sound of deep weariness. "It wasn't an accident, it was a hit. Director Yoon wanted to weaken me. He killed my wife and he almost killed my daughter. Jaya saw everything. She was in the back seat." Naomi felt a wave of horror. "God, Minho, I'm so sorry." He turned to her, his eyes dark with a sudden raw emotion. "Then you appeared, and she came back to life. You saved her." Naomi felt like she was suffocating. If Jaya was her daughter, then Minho's adoption was the result of a crime she didn't yet understand. But she saw the love in his eyes, and she realized he didn't know. He truly believed Jaya was his. "Minho, she started, but she couldn't finish. She couldn't risk him taking Jaya away before she had proof. She just stood there in the dark, two parents loving the same child, built on a foundation of secrets and blood. The call from the clinic came while Naomi was playing hide-and-seek with Jaya in the garden. She stepped into a quiet corner and answered with shaking hands. "Mrs. Monroe, your results are ready. We have emailed them to you." Naomi opened the attachment. Her vision blurred, then focused on the numbers. Probability of maternity, 99.9%. The world vanished. Jaya was hers. The baby she had lost 7 years ago in a Chicago mall was standing 10 feet away, calling for her mommy. Naomi sank onto a stone bench, the phone slipping from her fingers. She started to sob, loud, racking gasps of joy and pure, unadulterated agony. "Naomi?" She looked up. Minho was standing there, his face etched with concern. "What is it? What happened?" She couldn't keep it in anymore. The truth was a fire in her throat. "The birthmark," she whispered, "on her back." Minho frowned, crouching in front of her. "What about it?" 7 years ago, I had a daughter," Naomi said, the words pouring out like a flood. "I lost her. Someone took her from a mall. I searched for years, Minho. I almost died from the grief. My daughter had that exact same birthmark. I just got the DNA results." She held out the phone. Minho's face went white. He took the phone, staring at the screen for a long, silent minute. The only sound was the wind in the trees. When he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with a terrible, crushing understanding. "I didn't know," he whispered, his voice breaking. "God, Minho, I didn't know."
The agency, they told us she was an orphan. They said her mother didn't want her. She was stolen, Naomi screamed, her grief turning into a sharp, jagged anger. You've had my daughter for 4 years. You took her life. Minho stood up, his hands fisted in his hair. And I've loved her every single day. I've protected her with my life.
You want to take her? Minho's voice rose, raw and desperate. You want to rip her away from the only home she knows? She doesn't remember America, Naomi. She was 3 when she came to us. If you take her now, you will destroy her. Naomi stood up, her eyes blazing. She is my daughter. I have spent 7 years mourning her. You can't tell me to walk away. I am not telling you to walk away, Minho said, stepping closer until they were inches apart. I am telling you that she is fragile. She just started speaking again because of you. If you tell her the truth and try to pull her away from me, she will break. Naomi felt the truth of his words, and it hated it. So what? I just stay here, pretend I'm not her mother? No, Minho said, his hands reaching out to grab her shoulders. Stay, not as a contract. Stay as her mother. Stay as my wife. We will make this legal. I will give you everything, custody, rights, my name. Just don't take her from the only life that keeps her safe. Naomi looked at him, seeing the powerful mafia boss reduced to a man begging for his family. He wasn't the one who stole her baby, but he was the one who had kept her. I need time, she whispered. I need to think. Don't run, Minho pleaded. Promise me you won't run. We will figure this out together. Naomi nodded, but in her heart she was terrified. How could she share her daughter with a man whose world was filled with guns and enemies? That night, she lay in bed, watching Jaya sleep. The child looked so much like her. Every instinct told Naomi to take the girl and fly as far away as possible. But she looked at the door and knew Minho's guards were everywhere. She was a prisoner of love and a prisoner of power. She had found her daughter, but she had lost her freedom. Naomi tried to be smart, but her fear for Jaya's safety in Minho's world was growing. She began to make a plan. She waited until Minho left for a late-night meeting with his lieutenants. Then she packed a small bag. She didn't take the jewelry or the expensive clothes. She only took her passport, some cash, and Jaya's favorite teddy bear. "Mommy?" Jaya stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Why are you packing?" Naomi forced a smile, her heart breaking. "We're going on an adventure, baby. Just you and me, like a surprise trip." Jaya's eyes lit up. "With Daddy?" "No, sweetie, just us for now. Put on your shoes." They crept down the back stairs, Naomi's pulse thundering. She knew the shifts of the guards, or so she thought. They reached the side gate, the cool night air hitting their faces. Naomi felt a surge of hope. She would go to the American embassy. She would tell them everything. They would protect her. But as she reached for the gate handle, a shadow stepped out. "Going somewhere?" Minho's voice was like ice. He was standing there, his coat open, his eyes reflecting the moon. He looked terrifying. Naomi pushed Jaya behind her. "Let us go, Minho." He walked toward her, each step slow and deliberate. "You promised. You looked me in the eye and you promised you wouldn't run." "I can't live like this," Naomi shouted. "I can't raise my daughter in a house where people carry guns. You stole her, even if you didn't mean to." Minho's hand shot out, gripping her arm. He didn't hurt her, but his grip was inescapable. "And where will you go? You think Yoon won't find you the moment you leave my protection? You think the embassy can stop a bullet?" Jaya began to cry, clinging to Naomi's legs. "Daddy, don't be mad. Mommy, don't go." Minho looked down at the child and his face crumbled. He let go of Naomi's arm and sank to his knees, level with Jaya. "I'm not mad, Princess. I'm just scared." Minho looked up at Naomi, his eyes wet with tears she never thought he could shed. "I love her, Naomi. I love you. Please, if you leave, you're not just taking her from me. You're handing her to our enemies on a silver platter." Naomi felt her anger wavering. "Our enemies?"
Yoon knows who you are now. He knows Jaya is your biological daughter. He will use that to destroy us both. If you stay, I can protect you. I will teach you how to survive. I will give you the power to never be a victim again. Naomi looked at the dark forest surrounding the mansion. She looked at the small, trembling child between them, and she realized that Minho was right. She wasn't in Chicago anymore. She was in a den of wolves, and the only way to protect her cub was to become a wolf herself. "Teach me," she said, her voice hard. "Teach me how to fight. Teach me how to protect her." Minho nodded, a grim respect in his eyes. "Tomorrow at 5 a.m. in the gym, if you're going to be the wife of Kang Min-ho, you will be the most dangerous woman in Seoul." From that day on, Naomi's life changed. Every morning before the sun rose, Minho put her through brutal training. He taught her how to throw a punch that could break a jaw, how to use a knife, and how to fire a gun with a steady hand. He was a merciless teacher, pushing her until she collapsed from exhaustion.
Again, he would command, "In my world, I can't gets you killed." But in the quiet moments between the drills, something else was happening. Their bodies were often pressed together as he corrected her form. His hands would linger on her waist, her breath would catch against his neck. The hatred was being replaced by a fierce, burning attraction that neither of them could ignore. One morning, after a particularly intense session, Minho pinned her against the mat. Their faces were inches apart, both of them breathing hard. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. "Because you're mine," he said, his voice a low growl, "and I protect what's mine." The tension between them finally snapped a week later. They had been arguing about a security detail when Minho suddenly grabbed her and kissed her. It wasn't a soft kiss. It was a collision of years of pain, longing, and desperate need. Naomi thought him for a second. Then her hands tangled in his hair, and she kissed him back with equal ferocity. He carried her to his room, and for the first time, the arrangement became real. In the quiet after, Naomi lay in his arms, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "I still don't forgive you for having her all those years," she whispered into the dark. "I know," Minho replied, kissing the top of her head. "I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you." But their peace was short-lived. The next morning, Naomi's phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of Jaya playing in the schoolyard, seen through a sniper's scope. Underneath were the words, "Leave him or she dies." Naomi felt a coldness wash over her that no training could prepare her for. She didn't tell Minho. She knew he would go on a rampage and might get himself killed. She decided to handle it her way. She called the number back. "What do you want, Yoon?" "A meeting," the voice said. "Just you and me, no guards. If I see a single one of Minho's men, I pull the trigger." Naomi looked at her reflection in the mirror. She didn't see the scared teacher from Chicago anymore. She saw a mother who had already lost her child once and would never let it happen again. "Tell me where," she said. She grabbed the small, concealed pistol Minho had given her and slipped it into her waistband. She left a note for Minho under his pillow. "I'm ending this. Don't follow me until I call." She knew he would follow anyway, but she needed a head start. She was going to kill the man who threatened her daughter. Naomi arrived at an abandoned warehouse by the docks. The air smelled of salt and rust. She walked inside, her hand hovering near her weapon. Director Yoon was sitting in a lone chair in the center of the room, surrounded by 4 armed men. "You're late, Mrs. Kang," he said, his smile oily. "I'm not Mrs. Kang. I'm Naomi Monroe, and you're the man who's about to die." Yoon laughed, a dry, rattling sound. "You think because Minho taught you to punch a bag that you're a killer? You're a school teacher. You're a weakness." He signaled his men. They moved toward her. Naomi didn't panic. She remembered Minho's voice. "Wait for the moment they think they've won." As the first man reached for her, she spun, using his own momentum to throw him into the second. She pulled her gun and fired 2 shots. Clean, precise. 2 men went down. She dove behind a crate as the others returned fire. The sound of gunshots was deafening.
"You're good," Yoon shouted, hiding behind a pillar, "but not good enough." Suddenly, the doors of the warehouse exploded inward. Minho stormed in like a force of nature, his eyes glowing with a murderous light. He didn't say a word, he just started shooting. It was a bloodbath. When the smoke cleared, all of Yoon's men were dead. Yoon was wounded, crawling toward the back exit. Minho walked up to him, his gun leveled at the man's head. "Wait," Naomi said, stepping out from behind the crates. Minho looked at her. "He threatened our daughter, Naomi." "I know, which is why I should be the one to do it." She looked down at Yoon, who was begging for mercy. She thought of Jaya's nightmares. She thought of the 7 years she had lost. She didn't hesitate. She pulled the trigger. The threat was gone. Minho pulled her into his arms, his body shaking. "You're a monster," he whispered, but there was pride in his voice. "No," she said, "I'm a mother."
After the death of director Yoon, the underground world of Seoul went quiet. Minho's power was absolute, and Naomi was no longer a secret. She was the Black Queen of the Kang Empire. But their victory came with a price. Naomi still struggled with the truth of how Jaya had ended up in Korea. She forced Minho to use his resources to find the truth about the adoption agency. It took months of digging, but they finally found the trail. A criminal organization in Chicago had been kidnapping children and selling them to high-end adoption agencies in Asia. Jaya had been one of them. The realization that Minho had unintentionally funded the people who stole her baby was a bitter pill for Naomi to swallow. "I will find them all," Minho promised, his face set in stone. "Every person who touched that stroller, every person who handled the paperwork, they will pay." And he kept his word. One by one, the members of the kidnapping ring began to disappear. It was a dark kind of justice, but it was the only one Naomi could accept. In the midst of the darkness, however, there was light. Jaya was thriving. She was no longer having nightmares. She was top of her class, and she called Naomi Mommy with a love that was pure and true. One evening, Minho took Naomi back to the garden where it all started. He got down on one knee, but this time there was no box, no contract. He held a simple gold band. "Naomi, I know our beginning was a lie. I know I am a man with blood on my hands, but I love you more than I love my own life. Will you marry me, for real this time?" Naomi looked at the man who had become her protector, her teacher, and her partner. She looked at the house where her daughter was safe and happy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Minho." Their wedding was a small, private affair held at the mansion. There were no cameras, no rival bosses, just their family and a few trusted friends. Jaya was the flower girl, her smile so bright it outshone the sun. Mrs. Choi cried as she watched Naomi walk down the aisle in a white lace dress that made her look like a goddess. As they exchanged vows, Naomi felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in 7 years. She had her daughter back. She had a husband who would burn the world for her. She was no longer the girl who had lost everything. She was the woman who had fought for it and won. But life in the Mafia is never truly peaceful. 2 months after the wedding, Naomi started feeling unwell. She was tired all the time, and the smell of Minho's morning coffee made her stomach turn. She took a test in secret, her heart pounding. When the 2 lines occurred, she sat on the bathroom floor and cried. She was pregnant. She was terrified. How could she bring another child into this world? When she told Minho, he didn't say a word. He just picked her up and spun her around, his laughter echoing through the house. "Another one," he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. "A sibling for Jaya. We will be a real family." The pregnancy was difficult. Naomi was plagued by the fear that something would happen, that this child would be taken too. Minho became even more overprotective, barely letting her leave the house. He hired a private doctor and nurses to stay at the mansion. Every kick was a celebration. Every ultrasound was a victory. Jaya was thrilled, talking to Naomi's belly every night, telling the baby stories about their brave daddy. They felt like they were finally outrunning the shadows of their past. But the shadows are patient.
In her 7th month, Naomi woke up in the middle of the night in excruciating pain. She screamed for Minho, who was by her side in a second. "There's blood," she sobbed. "Minho, there's too much blood." The mansion erupted into chaos. Minho carried her to the car, his face a mask of terror. They sped to the private hospital, but the doctors had grave faces. "The placenta has detached. We need to operate now." Naomi was rushed into surgery. When she woke up, the room was silent. Minho was sitting by her bed, his head in his hands. He was crying. "The baby?" she whispered, though she already knew the answer. "He's gone, Naomi. I'm so sorry." The grief was a physical weight, crushing the air out of her lungs. They spent weeks in a fog of sorrow. Naomi felt like she was being punished for her past, for the life they lived. She pulled away from Minho, unable to look at him without seeing the son they had lost. Jaya tried to comfort her, but Naomi was hollow. It was Minho who finally broke through. He took her to a small, quiet park they'd bought and turned into a memorial. "We didn't lose him because of who we are," he said, holding her tight. "We lost him because life is cruel sometimes, but we still have each other. We still have Jaya. We have to keep going." Slowly, painfully, they began to heal. They focused all their love on Jaya, who became the glue that held them together. They realized that they couldn't control everything, but they could control how they loved. And then, a year later, a miracle happened. Naomi was pregnant again. This time, there were no complications. This time, they were blessed with not just one baby, but 3 babies, 2 girls and a boy.
The arrival of the triplets, Minnie, Hana, and Sua, turned the silent mansion into a house of noise and laughter. Minho was a changed man. He still ran his empire, but he was home every night to help with bottles and diapers. He was a lion who had become a lamb for his children. Naomi watched him one evening as he rocked all 3 babies at once, Jaya sitting at his feet reading them a story. She realized that they had created something beautiful out of the wreckage of their lives. "You're staring," Minho said, a smirk on his face. "I'm just marveling at my luck," Naomi replied. "Luck had nothing to do with it," he said, his eyes softening. "It was you. You were the one who had the strength to stay. You were the one who taught us how to be a family." But the world outside was watching. Minho's rivals saw his devotion to his family as a weakness. They didn't understand that a man with everything to lose is the most dangerous man of all. A new threat was rising, a young, hungry boss from the south who wanted Minho's throne. He decided to make his move on the day of the triplets' first birthday party. He thought the celebration would make Minho's guard drop. He was wrong. Minho and Naomi had built a fortress. Every waiter at the party was an elite soldier. Every flower arrangement hid a weapon. When the assassins struck, they didn't find a defenseless family. They found a trap. Naomi herself took down 2 men who tried to get near the nursery. She fought with a cold, calculated fury that left Minho's men in awe. When the smoke cleared, the young boss was captured. Minho didn't kill him. He brought him into his office and showed him a photo of his children. "This is why you will never win," Minho said. "I'm not fighting for power anymore. I'm fighting for them, and there is no force on earth that can beat that." The years passed, and the Kung family became a legend in Seoul. They were known for their wealth and power, but also for their strange, unbreakable bond. Naomi and Minho grew older together, their love only deepening with time. Jaya grew up to be a brilliant lawyer, using her father's influence to fight for the rights of orphans and victims of human trafficking. She never forgot that she was the daughter of 2 worlds, and she spent her life bridge building. The triplets followed in her mother's footsteps, becoming artists and thinkers who brought beauty to a city that had once been so cold. One day, many years later, Naomi and Minho were sitting on their terrace, watching the sunset. Their hair was gray and their steps were slower, but their hands were still interlaced. "Do you ever regret it?" Minho asked. "Regret what?" "The airport, the ring, the life I forced you into?" Naomi looked at him, her eyes filled with a lifetime of memories. She thought of the scared girl she had been and the powerful woman she had become.
She thought of the daughter she had found and the children she had raised. She thought of the man who had loved her through the darkness and the light. "No," she said, squeezing his hand. "I don't regret a single second. It was the hardest, most beautiful journey of my life. I would do it all again for you." Minho smiled, the same slow, dangerous smile that had once terrified her, but now it only brought her warmth. "I love you, Naomi. I love you, Minho, forever." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, the Black Queen and the Mafia King sat in the quiet of their empire, knowing that their greatest legacy wasn't the money or the power, but the love that had saved them all. The story of the girl who found her mommy at the airport would be told for generations, a folk tale of blood, diamonds, and a mother's heart that could never be broken. As the years rolled on, Naomi realized that their story wasn't just about them anymore. It was about the legacy they were leaving behind. Jaya had become a fierce advocate for justice, and she had uncovered even more secrets about the organization that had stolen her. She worked with Naomi to set up a foundation that helped reunite families who had been torn apart by trafficking. They called it the Crescent Moon Foundation. It was Naomi's way of turning her greatest pain into a beacon of hope for others. The foundation became world-renowned, and Naomi was often invited to speak at international conferences. She was no longer just the wife of a mafia boss, she was a leader in her own right. Minho supported her every step of the way, using his connections to ensure that her work was never hindered. He had slowly transitioned his businesses into legitimate enterprises, shedding the skin of the monster he once was. He did it for her, and he did it for their children. He wanted them to have a name they could be proud of, a name that didn't carry the scent of gunpowder. But the past has a way of rearing its head when you least expect it. One afternoon, a man arrived at the foundation's office in Chicago. He was old, frail, and claimed to have information about the day Jaya was taken. Naomi flew back to her hometown to meet him. It was a strange feeling being back in the city where her life first shattered. She felt like a different person now, stronger and more certain. The man was a former mall security guard who had been paid to look the other way that day. He was dying and wanted to clear his conscience. "I saw the man who took her," he whispered, his voice trembling. "He wasn't a criminal. He was a man in an expensive suit. He looked desperate." Naomi listened as the old man described the kidnapper. It wasn't a professional snatcher. It was a man who had lost his own child and had been driven mad by grief. He had stolen Jaya to replace what he had lost, but he had panicked and sold her to the agency when he couldn't handle the guilt. The man provided a name that belonged to a prominent family in Chicago. Naomi felt a surge of cold anger, but it was quickly replaced by a profound sense of closure. The mystery was finally fully solved. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't need to. She had Jaya, and she had a life that was fuller than she ever imagined. She returned to Seoul and told Minho and Jaya everything. They sat together in the garden, the same crescent moon hanging in the sky. "It doesn't matter who took me anymore," Jaya said, holding Naomi's hand, "because you're the one who found me. You're my mother in every way that counts." Minho looked at them both, his eyes shining with pride. "We are whole," he said. And they were. The triplets were now teenagers, filled with the fire and grace of both their parents. The house was always full of music, laughter, and the occasional argument, the beautiful, messy reality of a real family. Naomi looked at the diamond ring on her finger, the shackle that had become a symbol of her strength. She realized that the airport hadn't been a trap. It had been a crossroads. She had chosen the path of love, and it had led her home. As Naomi and Minho reached their twilight years, they decided to return to the place where it all began, Incheon Airport. They stood in the terminal watching the crowds of people rushing to their destinations. It was a different world now, faster and more connected, but the human heart remained the same. They saw a young woman standing alone, looking lost and uncertain. Naomi walked up to her and handed her a small card for the foundation. "Sometimes the most unexpected tug on your coat is the start of a miracle," Naomi said with a wink. The young woman looked confused, but she smiled and tucked the card into her pocket. Naomi and Minho walked away, their arms linked. They had lived a life of extraordinary drama, but they had found peace in the simple things. They spent their days traveling, visiting the places they had only seen in books, and their nights surrounded by their children and grandchildren. Jaya was now a judge, the triplets were successful in their respective fields, and the Kang name was synonymous with philanthropy and integrity. They had rewritten their destiny. One night, as they lay in bed, Minho turned to Naomi. "I'm tired, my queen," he whispered. Naomi knew what he meant. His heart, once so cold and hard, was finally weary from a lifetime of loving so fiercely. She held him close, her tears wetting his shoulder. "It's okay, Minho. You can rest. We're all safe. You did it." He took one last deep breath and closed his eyes, a peaceful smile on his face. He died in the arms of the woman who had saved his soul. The funeral for Kang Minho was the largest Seoul had ever seen. People came from all walks of life, business titans, world leaders, and the thousands of people his foundation had helped. But Naomi didn't care about the crowds. She stood with her children and grandchildren, a sea of black faces and Korean faces, all united by the man they had lost. Jaya gave the eulogy, her voice strong and clear. "My father was a man of many secrets," she said, "but the greatest secret of all was his capacity for love. He was a man who was lost until a woman from across the world showed him the way home." Naomi felt a deep, resonant pride. She had lost her husband, but his spirit was alive in everyone he had touched. After the ceremony, she returned to the mansion. It felt quiet, but not empty. She walked through the rooms, seeing him in every corner. She saw the gym where he had taught her to be strong. She saw the garden where he had asked her to stay. She saw the nursery where he had become a father. She sat on the terrace and looked out at the city. She wasn't afraid. She was a woman who had survived the worst life could throw at her and had come out on the other side with a heart full of love. She knew that her time would come eventually, and when it did, he would be waiting for her at the gates. Naomi lived for another 10 years, a matriarch who was loved and respected by all who knew her. She saw her grandchildren grow into beautiful, strong adults. She saw the Crescent Moon Foundation grow into a global force for good. She never stopped telling the story of the day she met Jaya at the airport, a story that became a legend in their family. On her final day, she sat in her favorite chair in the garden, the sun warming her face. She closed her eyes and saw a vision of the airport. She saw herself at 24, clutching a coffee, feeling lost. And then she saw him. Minho was standing there, looking just as he did the day they met, tall, powerful, and waiting. He held out his hand to her. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Kang?" he asked. Naomi smiled, a deep, soul-deep peace washing over her. She reached out and took his hand. "Yes, Minho, I'm ready." She took her last deep breath with a smile on her lips, leaving behind a legacy of love that would never fade. The story of the Black Lady and the Korean Mafia boss was more than a fairy tale. It was a testament to the power of the human spirit to find light in the darkest of places. And they lived happily ever after, in a world where no one is truly lost, and every mommy is a prayer that is finally answered. If you found beauty in this story, remember to cherish the ones you love, for you never know when a simple tug on your coat might change your life forever. Thank you for listening to this tale of the Crescent Moon. Be blessed, and may your own miracles find you when you least expect them.